The alarm didn't sound before the HFY delegation walked in. That was the first sign something was wrong. Commander Dara Voss stood at the edge of the Grand Hall, her hand resting on the grip of a weapon she wasn't allowed to draw inside these walls. The hall was packed, diplomats, translators, military observers from 14 species, all gathered for the Convergence Summit, the most important interspecies negotiation in 3 decades. The HFY were the last to arrive, and they moved like water finding cracks in stone. Silent. Deliberate. Their queen, Seraphel, entered last. Dara had studied the briefings. Seraphel was 7 feet of controlled power, her exoskeleton a deep violet threaded with bioluminescent gold that pulsed with her heartbeat. 4 arms, 2 primary and 2 secondary, folded at precise angles against her thorax. Her eyes, 6 of them, arranged in a crescent across her forehead, swept the room with the patience of something that had lived for 200 years and planned to live 200 more. She did not smile. HFY didn't have that particular architecture. But the tilt of her crown crest communicated something close to disdain. The human delegation sat across the curved table. Ambassador Chen Wei was sweating through his collar. Behind him, a cluster of age-shuffled papers that were purely ceremonial. Everything real was on encrypted tablets. And, beside the ambassador, in a chair he absolutely should not have been sitting in, was Corporal James Marin. Marin was not a diplomat. Marin was, technically, Dara's responsibility. He'd been assigned as a secondary security presence, which meant standing quietly near the wall and looking formidable. He was good at looking formidable. He was 6'2", broad-shouldered, with a face that had been rearranged twice in bar fights and once in actual combat. He had a reputation in the Corps for saying exactly the wrong thing at exactly the wrong moment with exactly the wrong amount of confidence. He was currently sitting 2 chairs from the ambassador because someone had spilled a translation unit on his original position and he'd simply moved rather than make a scene. Nobody had corrected him because everything had been moving too fast and now Seraphel was already entering and it was too late to shuffle him out without creating a diplomatic incident. Dara watched him. She willed him, through sheer force of trained professional desperation, to stay quiet. The opening formalities took 11 minutes. Dara counted each one. Ambassador Chen spoke well, careful, measured, the right amount of deference without groveling, which the HFY apparently found insulting. Seraphel's primary translator, a thin creature called an Avari named Pip, rendered everything into those layered HFY tones that sounded like 2 orchestras playing simultaneously. Then came the cultural exchange segment. Dara hated the cultural exchange segment. It was meant to build goodwill. It was, in practice, a minefield. Each delegation was supposed to offer a gesture of their culture. The HFY offered a silence, 3 full minutes of it, which apparently represented the void before creation in their cosmology. The humans sat through it admirably. Dara's heart only stopped twice. Then, Ambassador Chen nodded at his lead cultural attaché, a woman named Dr. Reyes, who began explaining the human concept of humor as a bonding mechanism. She was good. She kept it academic, kept it clean. She explained that humans often use jokes to diffuse tension, to build trust, to acknowledge shared absurdity. She explained that a certain category of human humor involved proposals, mock offers, comedic suggestions, that were understood by all parties to be untrue, meant only to generate warmth. Marin, who had been quiet for 47 minutes and had therefore used up his entire reserve, leaned slightly forward and said, at a volume that carried, "Basically, it's how I'd probably propose to someone way out of my league. Just say it, laugh it off, and pray they don't take it seriously." The room didn't erupt. It contracted. Seraphel turned her head. All 6 eyes moved to James Marin. The translation happened in real time through Pip's earpiece relay. Dara watched Pip's expression, and the Avari, who had translated for HFY royalty for 30 years, went very, very still. Marin noticed the silence about 2 seconds after it started. His ears went red. He looked at Dr. Reyes. She was staring at the table. He looked at Ambassador Chen. Chen had stopped breathing. Marin looked, finally, at Seraphel. She had not looked away from him. Her crown crest, which had been angled back in what the briefing materials described as neutral observation, had shifted forward. Dara had read about that posture. She'd read about it in the section titled, Attention of Consequence. Marin did the only thing Dara had never once expected him to do. He held her gaze. The silence lasted 9 seconds. Dara knew because she counted, the way she counted everything now: exits, weapons, variables, seconds until something irreparably broke. Serot vel spoke. Her voice was layered, like sound traveling through water and air at once. Even without translation, it moved through the room and touched something primal in every human present. Pip translated in a voice barely above a whisper, as though lowering the volume might soften the meaning. The human male has made an offer. Ambassador Chen found his voice. Your Radiance, I assure you, Corporal Marin was illustrating a cultural concept. It was not a literal. I understand what it was. Sereth Vel had not moved. Her secondary arms unfolded slightly, which the briefing materials did not cover, which meant Dara was now operating without a map. I am addressing the male who said it. Every pair of eyes in the room moved to Marin. He sat straight. Dara would give him that, whatever chaos lived inside him, his posture was immaculate. He met the Queen's six-eyed gaze and did not look away. I meant no disrespect, he said. His voice was steady. It was a bad joke. I apologize. Pip translated. The room held its breath. Seraphel's crest moved again, forward, then a slow tilt to the right. The Alvari translator made a small sound that was not quite a word. Among the Cathay Array, she said, through Pip, an offer made in the presence of a full court, regardless of intent, carries weight. This is not human custom. But you are in a Cathay Array recognized space, and the summit protocols are Cathay Array drafted. Ambassador Chen had gone the color of old paper. Your Radiance, if we could address this through the formal diplomatic process, we are. Her eyes did not leave Marin. Corporal, do you understand what I am telling you? Marin was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then, that I accidentally proposed to you in front of your entire court and there are consequences to that. Another silence. Pip looked like he was considering a career change. Yes, said Serethfel. The room did something Dara had never seen a room of professional diplomats do. It collectively forgot how to function. Dr. Reyes had her hand pressed over her mouth. 2 of the Cathay guards had shifted their stance, not aggressively, but the way soldiers move when something unexpected has entered the calculation. Ambassador Chen was writing something on his tablet with the frantic energy of a man trying to find a regulation that would save him. Dara stepped forward. Not dramatically, 1 measured step, placing her in Marin's peripheral vision. She needed him to know she was there. She needed him to not do anything irrevocable. He didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the Queen. What are the consequences? He asked. Pip translated. One of the Cathay secondary advisors made a sharp, clicking sound that silenced even the ambient noise of the room's environmental system. Seraphel's crest settled into a position Dara had not seen before. She made a note, in the part of her mind that kept notes under pressure, that she would need to find a xenolinguist who specialized in Cathay body language within the next 24 hours. An offer made in full court, the Queen said, must be formally accepted or formally refused. A refusal ends the matter. An acceptance begins a process. Both carry obligations, for the one who offered, and for the one who responds. Chen looked up from his tablet. Something had shifted in his expression. He'd found something. Your Radiance, Cathay Summit Protocols, Section 41, Subsection C. In cases of cultural misalignment, offers made by non-authorized representatives can be formally withdrawn by the delegation head within a period of, you read our protocols carefully, Ambassador. I try to. Then, you know that subsection C applies to trade offers. Commercial exchange. Not personal declarations made before the full court. She paused. Your protocols also cannot account for the fact that I have already responded. The room stopped. Dara's hand tightened on the grip she still wasn't allowed to draw. What was your response, Your Radiance? She asked, because someone had to, and Chen was frozen and Marin was still looking at the Queen like he was trying to read a language he'd never been taught. Serethfel finally looked away from Marin to Dara. 6 eyes, each one a different depth of gold, landed on her with the weight of someone who had ended wars with the same expression. I said yes. The recess was called in under 30 seconds. Dara had Marin out of the hall in 45, through a side corridor used by maintenance staff, and into a briefing room that had the advantage of being both empty and soundproofed. She closed the door. She stood with her back against it for 3 full seconds. Marin sat in one of the chairs. His hands were flat on the table. He was looking at them. "Before you say anything," he started. "I'm not going to say anything," Dara said. "I'm going to breathe for 10 seconds and, then, I'm going to say everything." She breathed. He waited. "You," she said, "are a corporal. You are here because Lieutenant Vasquez has food poisoning and you are the nearest warm body with a clearance card. You are not a diplomat. You are not authorized to speak at a summit table. You are definitely not authorized to accidentally propose to the sovereign ruler of the Cathay Dominion, which controls trade routes through 6 sectors and has a standing military that could make our carrier fleet feel very small and very far from home." She paused. "And she said yes." He looked up. "I know." "What does that mean, Marin? What does it mean in Cathay law? Because I guarantee you that whatever it means, it is not what it means when someone says yes to a bad joke at a human dinner party." "I don't know exactly," he said. "But I think it means she's not treating it as a joke." "Why would she not treat it as a joke?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because I didn't look away." Dara stared at him. "When she looked at me," he said, "I didn't look away. I don't know what that means in Cathay protocol, but I think it means something. I think it meant I wasn't dismissing her. And, then, I didn't dodge the question when she asked what I understood. I just told her the truth." He exhaled slowly. "I think she's been in rooms full of people performing respect for 200 years. I think she noticed." "That," Dara said carefully, "is either the most insightful thing you've ever said or the story you're telling yourself so you don't panic." "Probably both." She pushed off the door. "Chen is going to call the delegation lawyers. They're going to look for a diplomatic exit that doesn't insult the Cathay and doesn't require you to actually—" She stopped. "Marin, what are you thinking?" He had that look, the one she'd seen twice before, once before a firefight that shouldn't have been survivable and once when he'd pulled a kid out of a burning transport. Calm in a way that wasn't absence of fear but something that had decided fear wasn't the most important thing in the room. "I'm thinking," he said, "that she's a queen who's been managing her court for 2 centuries and she hasn't survived that long by being impulsive. If she said yes, she had a reason. And I'm thinking maybe we should find out what that reason is before we spend our energy looking for an exit." The xenolinguist Chen's team pulled in remotely was a professor from the University of Cascadia named Dr. Ola Finn, who appeared on the briefing room screen 40 minutes later looking like someone who had been woken from sleep and was furious about it but not furious enough to miss this particular call. "Crest forward, right tilt, secondary arms extended at under 45 degrees, Finn said, after they described what they'd seen. She was writing notes at speed. That's unusual. That's an active recognition posture. That's not ceremony. That's personal." "Personal," Chen repeated. "It means she saw something she didn't expect. Something that registered as genuine." Finn looked up from her notes. "The yes, in Cathay court tradition, a sovereign's public yes to a personal declaration is called a Velsora. It's rare. I found maybe 8 recorded instances in 300 years of documented history. It doesn't mean marriage in the human sense. It's closer to acknowledgement of equal standing. She's saying the offer was worth receiving." The room was quiet. "What are the obligations?" Dara asked. She said there were obligations. Finn was already pulling up references. For the one who offered, a formal statement of intent. Not necessarily romantic. An intent of continued honest engagement. Presence. The Cathay have a concept, Valmura, which roughly translates to one who does not perform. A person who means what they say in the face of consequence. She paused. And, for the one who responds, protection of the offering. If she invoked Velsora, she's committed to not allowing her court to punish or dismiss the one who spoke. "She's protecting him," Dara said. "She's acknowledging him," Finn corrected. "There's a difference in Cathay culture. Protecting is hierarchy. Acknowledging is peer recognition." Marin had been quiet through all of this. Now he said, "She's alone in there." Everyone looked at him. She's a 200-year-old queen at a summit full of species who need something from her. She walked in and every single person in that room was performing. Calculating. Even the ones trying to be respectful were doing it because respect serves their agenda. He met Dara's eyes. And someone accidentally told a bad joke and, then, told her the honest truth about what happened when she called him on it. And she's been waiting a long time for something that wasn't a performance. The silence that followed was different from the ones in the Grand Hall. It was the silence of people recalibrating. Chen looked at the screen. Dr. Finn, if Corporal Marin makes the formal statement, the intent declaration, what happens next? The Velsora process opens a dialogue. A series of formal exchanges. It's months long, usually. But it also, and this is important, it creates a protected diplomatic channel between the Cathay Array sovereign and the individual. Any communications, any meetings, fall under Cathay Array sacred law. She hesitated. If you're thinking what I think you're thinking, Ambassador, that's not a back channel. That's something the Cathay Array would consider more binding than any treaty. More binding, Chen said slowly, than the trade agreements we've been trying to negotiate for 6 years. The room understood. Dara pulled Marin into the corridor outside the briefing room. Just the two of them. She needed him to hear this without an audience. If you do this, she said, it's not just you. It's every human in that room. It's the people back home who need those trade routes. If you go back in there and make a statement and, then, 6 months from now you can't sustain it, if she figures out that you became a performance, it won't just end badly for you personally. He nodded. He'd understood that before she said it. Can you sustain it? She asked. I don't know what it is yet, he said. But I know I wasn't performing when I looked at her. And I know I wasn't performing when I told her what I understood. Whatever comes next, I'd have to go in and find out what it actually requires. He paused. But I'm not afraid of her. I think she knows that. I think that's why she's interested. Not being afraid of a queen is either very brave or very stupid. Yeah, he said. But she didn't look away from me either. Dara studied him for a long moment. She'd served with him for 3 years. She'd seen him be reckless. She'd seen him be stupid. She'd also seen him, twice, be something quietly extraordinary. She made a decision. I'm coming in with you, she said. Not as your commanding officer. As a witness. The Cathay Array respect witnesses. You read the briefing materials. I read everything, she said. Let's go. The Grand Hall had been cleared of everyone except the Cathay Array Corps delegation and Ambassador Chen, who had requested, and been granted, a continuation of formal proceedings. The reduced attendance made the room feel larger, and the silence in it feel more deliberate. Sereth Vel stood rather than Saturday. Her crest was in the neutral position again. Waiting. Marin walked to the center of the floor. Exactly the distance the briefing materials indicated was appropriate for a formal address. Dara stood 2 paces behind him and 1 to his right. The witness position. She'd confirmed it with Finn on the way in. Pip stood ready. His expression had settled into something professional and very, very focused. Marin spoke slowly enough for the translation to stay current. I made an offer I didn't intend as a real one. You asked if I understood the consequence. I told you the truth. I'm not going to tell you now that I had some plan or that I understood what I was doing. I didn't. A pause. But I'm standing here now. That part is a choice. And what I can offer, the thing that might have been worth anything to you in that moment, is that I'll keep making that choice. To be honest when it's hard. To not perform when performing would be easier. To stay in the room. He held her gaze. I don't know what your protocols require beyond this. But I mean what I just said. Pip translated. The words moved through the room. Sereth Vel was still. Her secondary arms folded precisely. Her crest moved, the slow, deliberate tilt that Dr. Finn had said she'd need to cross-reference but that Dara now recognized, from the context of everything that had led to this moment, as something that meant the space between formality and something real. She spoke. Pip translated. The Velsora stands, she said. The Velmara is accepted. A pause that lasted exactly long enough to change everything. The dialogue begins. Marin exhaled. Dara didn't move. She kept her eyes forward, her hands steady, her breathing measured. But, in the part of her mind that kept notes, she wrote one word. Earned. The lights in the Grand Hall were still the same color. The air was still the same weight. Every treaty, every trade route, every political calculation in the room had just shifted on the axis of one man who'd made a bad joke and, then, told the truth about it. Seraph looked at Marin one more time before she turned to her advisors. Her crest was forward. He didn't look away. .33.